The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just the ghost of you and me. It's just the smoke and gasoline. It's just the ghost of you and me. Of you and me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody tonight?
Tonight's show is going to be freaking awesome. Tonight's one of those nights where we're talking about a legend and a mystery and just an all-around crazy badass tale. Tonight is going to be the tale and the legend of the Bean Clan. Now, I don't know if everybody who is listening knows who the Bean Clan was. According to the legends, the Bean Clan was a 45-member clan from Scotland that lived inside of caves down by the coast. And supposedly they were cannibals that would attack people on the road, kill them, and eat them. They killed and ate over 5,000 people. That's crazy. Before they were finally caught, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, rounded up and put to death. They were executed. That is the legend. That's the story. So is that story true? Well, that's what we're going to look at tonight. And we're going to try to figure out if this is just local legend or if this actually happened. The story first appeared in something called the Newgate Calendar. Okay, the Newgate Calendar is a crime catalog that is put out by the Newgate Prison in London. Now, historians are mixed on whether or not Bean actually ever existed. Some say he did. Some say he didn't. It's one of those things that you don't know. Others tend to believe that he may have existed, but that the stories about him are greatly, greatly exaggerated. We're going to try to look at everything tonight and figure this one out. So according to the Newgate Calendar, Alexander Bean, who was the head of the entire clan, was supposedly born in East Lothian during the 16th century. His father was a ditch digger and a hedge trimmer, and young Bean tried to follow in his father's footsteps and do what he did for a living. But it didn't work out so well because he quickly realized that he didn't want to do that. It sucked. It wasn't any fun. He wasn't enjoying himself. He didn't want to do it. So he left home. He left home with a woman named Agnes Douglas, who they called Black Agnes. And according to the legends, she was a very vicious woman. And was even accused multiple times of being a witch. So they went on a spree where they would rob people and then kill them and eat them. They ended up going down to this coastal cave in, and I might mispronounce this, Benin Head. It's Bennane. So it's either Benin or Benin Head, between Girvan and Ballantrae, where they lived for like 25 years, and nobody could find them because this cave was down by the water, and it was like 200 yards deep. And during the high tide, the entrance to that cave was completely submerged, supposedly. So they were able to live inside of that cave system and nobody knew they were there because the only time you could even get in would be on low tide. So apparently the cave system must have went up, if that makes sense. There must have been an entrance that they could get into, and then the pathway, whatever it was inside, must have went up into the hillside above sea level so that during high tide they would be good to go. They wouldn't be drowned. So they called Alexander Bean Sawney. That was his nickname. So Sawney and Agnes ended up having 8 sons and 6 daughters. Those children produced 18 grandsons and 14 granddaughters. And this is going to get a little nasty, and I apologize in advance, but we are talking about a murderous group of crazy people who ate people they killed. So you have to expect a little bit of weirdness. Some of the grandchildren were the products of incest between the children. They didn't really go out and meet new people. They just kind of stuck to their own and kept it in the family, so to speak. And so a lot of these grandchildren were the product of the children with the other children. I told you it gets a little weird and nasty. So all of these children and grandchildren kind of took after their mom and dad to where they didn't like to work either. None of them wanted to go out and get a job. They wanted to loot and rob and kill. So that's what they did. They would lay ambushes during the night, and they would wait for people to come by on the road. And when they would come by, they would ambush those people, and they would rob them. And then they would murder them and take them back to the cave. So once they brought the bodies back to the cave where they lived, they would cut the bodies up, and basically they would butcher the bodies and eat them. Now, you might say, well, what if it was a small group of people that was traveling together? I'm sure they could have ate everything out of every body. Did they just waste it? No, they did not waste it. They actually had leftovers quite a lot because lots of times it would be a couple people or more that they would bring back to the cave dead. And so they took the leftovers that they didn't eat and they put them in barrels and they pickled them. And anything that was not yummy, so to speak, that they did not want to eat, they would just kind of chuck out into the water. And every once in a while, the bits that they threw out into the water didn't get eaten by sharks or fish, and they would wash up on the nearby beaches. Now, sometimes that was deliberate. Sometimes it wasn't. Now, I say deliberate because some historians believe that it wasn't an accident that these body parts were washing up on the beach once in a while. They tend to think that it was the Beans clan's plan, that kind of rhymes, clan plan, to try to make people think that the people that are disappearing on the road were the victims of wild animals. So in their mind, if there would be a body part here or there that would wash up, people would think, oh, this person must have been eaten by a bear or whatever, and part of them drifted out to sea or something. That was what some historians believed that the plan was. The idea was that if people believed that the area was dangerous because of wild animals, that they would never suspect that a group of murderous cannibal killers actually lived there. And it must have actually worked fairly well because this went on for quite a while. I mean, they had a body count of, some say 5,000, so that doesn't happen in a couple days. Eventually, people kind of started to notice that there were people that were just disappearing. So they started organizing search parties to go out and try to find whatever was responsible for all these people disappearing. During one search, they actually found the cave that the beings were living in. But they decided they wouldn't search it because they didn't believe that any human beings could actually survive in the cave and live in there. So this frustrated the townspeople a great deal. People kept disappearing. It was getting to be a lot of people now. And they just couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. They went out looking. They didn't find anybody that was out killing. They didn't find a group of robbers. They didn't find a bunch of wild animals that were dangerous, that would attack them when they went out with their search parties. They couldn't for the life of them figure out what in the hell was happening to all these people. So what they did was they rounded up a bunch of the more sketchy members of society. The derelicts, the no-goods, the people that were the troublemakers. They would round those people up and they would interrogate them. And if they did not like the answers, they would just hang them. So they ended up lynching multiple innocent people. Now, some of those people may very well have deserved to be lynched. They were, after all, criminals and the garbage of society. They were the people that were up to no good all the time. But they were innocent of this. They didn't do this thing that they were hung for. But no matter how many people they strung up, the disappearances continued to happen. So they started to become suspicious of all of the local innkeepers in the town. And there started to be murmuring and rumors that it was probably the innkeepers that were doing it. Because they, in a lot of these cases, because these were people that were traveling on the road, they were the last ones to see these people alive. And now they're dead. So they're thinking maybe it's the innkeepers. One night, the Bean Clan ambushed a married couple. The man from that couple was a soldier. So he was very, very skilled in combat. So he fought off the clan with his sword and a pistol. The clan ended up mauling the wife and killing her because they were sharing a horse. The husband and wife were riding the same horse. And during the struggle and the fight, she fell off. And some of the members of the Bean Clan got a hold of her. And they beat her and stabbed her and scratched her and did everything they could until she was dead. The husband tried to help her, but there wasn't a whole lot he could do because there was a whole lot of them. They had the husband surrounded. And it's pretty apparent that he would have ended up dying too. But he was able to hold them long enough for a large group of travelers to come up the trail behind them. Now the Beans saw this big group of travelers coming and they said, to hell with this, and they took off and got out of there. So these travelers took the man back to the local magistrate, the local judge, and told him everything that happened. So the jig was up, so to speak. People now knew that the Beans existed. They knew that they were there in that area somewhere. So they sent message to the king. So the king learns about what has been going on and all the atrocities that's been happening. So he personally decides to lead a manhunt and bring along like 400 men and a bunch of dogs. So they tracked the Beans down and found them in that cave. Mainly, honestly, because of the dogs. The dogs found them. They were able to sniff them out. So they decided they were going in that cave to get them. So they got some torches and they went into the cave. They found the members of the Bean Clan in the cave, completely surrounded by human remains. They had body parts hanging from the wall. They had barrels that were filled with arms and legs and stuff. And there were just piles and piles of stolen heirlooms and jewelry and stuff like that. It looked like a dragon cave with all the treasure. So what happens next is one of those things that are kind of disputed, because there are a couple different versions of what happened. The most common version says that the Bean Clan was captured alive because they gave up without even a fight. They were like, okay, you got us, and they took them to jail. They put them in chains and they took them to the toll booth jail in Edinburgh. Then they were transferred to Glasgow, probably, where they were executed without a trial because they were seen as being subhuman and were unfit for a trial because of their crimes, mainly because of the dismemberment and the cannibalism. Sawney and all of the men of the clan had their genitals cut off and thrown into the fire. Their hands and their feet were severed, and they were just left to bleed to death. As he was dying, Sawney supposedly began screaming, and his dying words were, "It isn't over. It will never be over." So during all this, the women of the clan were forced to watch. So they had to watch the men of the clan get their genitals cut off and their hands and feet cut off and just left to bleed out. So they took all of the women and all of the children of the clan and they burned them alive on stakes. In that time period, people that were guilty of treason were usually either hanged or they were drawn and quartered. Women during that time period were burned. So the women here got the same penalty as if they were convicted of treason. The men, however, got a much, much worse penalty. Because hanging is usually a fairly quick way to die if done properly. Sometimes it's not. Drawing and quartering would suck, but I don't think that would last all that long. So the way they died really sucked. The other version of this story states that the king and his men put gunpowder at the entrance of the cave and blew it up so that they suffocated inside the cave. That is the other version of that story. Now that version doesn't have a whole lot of detail to it. They just say they blew up the entrance and they died of suffocation. So I tend to believe that probably the first version of that story would be the correct one because it has way more detail. There's another legend about the Bean Clan that comes from the town of Girvan, which is located near the sites of these murders. According to that legend, one of Bean's daughters actually left the clan and settled in the town. And supposedly she planted a dul tree that became known as the Hairy Tree. That's what they called it. And after her family was captured and killed, they realized who she was. And they went and they grabbed the daughter that had settled in the town, and they hung her from that tree that she had planted. So that is the legend of the Bean Clan. So is it true? Does it show up anywhere other than that one publication from the prison? Well, Dorothy Sayers put a narrative of the Bean family in a book that she wrote in 1928. And she was citing another account that was written in 1843 about them. One interesting thing is, according to historical documents of the time, like newspapers, diaries from the era that have been found, there is no mention of any kind of ongoing disappearances of hundreds or of thousands of people. There's no mention of anybody named Sawney Bean. So that would be a strike against this being true. Now, with that being said, this happened a long time ago. So it's highly possible that there could have been some accounts of it. There could have been newspaper stories about it. There could have been diary things written about it. It could have been a very well-publicized event at that time, and we just simply don't have any of those documents. Because it's not like today where everything is kept on file and kept on the internet where you can just access it. Back then, all that stuff was kept one copy in the courthouse. And if you want to see it, you got to go to the courthouse and ask for it and look at it. And a lot of those records, they just simply didn't survive. So just because there are no records that we can find of it today doesn't necessarily mean that the guy didn't exist and none of this stuff happened. Most likely what happened here is what happens a lot of times. And that is, there is some sort of kernel of truth that inspires the legend. It could have been something that is exaggerated. It could be something that is a story that is supposed to represent somebody else, like a king or something like that. Those are always possible things. But I think with the level of detail in this story, the numbers, I think that there's a chance that this could have actually happened. Can I say 100%? No. But this has a whole lot of detail for a made-up legend. Usually when you have made-up legends, you will get a few details, but a lot of it is generalized. And a lot of it is different depending on where the story is told. So different villages, different areas of the country will have different versions of that story, to where in one the guy has a hook for a hand, and in the other one he carries around hedge clippers, and that's what he kills with. Whatever. That's usually the way legend works, to where you don't have a uniform, agreed upon narrative with detail like that. That doesn't happen very often unless it is something that was a legend that was very popular and written down and everybody knew it from a book or something like that. Then the detail would be there from the beginning and it wouldn't evolve as much. So I think this could be something that actually happened. Maybe it didn't happen. There's really no way to know for sure because we don't have records that say it did, and we don't have such a precise and wonderful record system from that time to look through and say, okay, there's hundreds of thousands of documents here, and he's not mentioned in any of them. That's not available either. There's not as many documents or historical diaries and stuff like that from that time period, from that area, that you can make a definitive yes or no out of it, honestly. So this is one that's going to be left up to you. Do you believe this story? Do you believe that the Bean Clan existed and killed people on the road and ate them? It absolutely wouldn't be the first time that you had cannibals operating, even groups of cannibals operating. So it's nothing out of the realm of possibility, or doesn't require a great leap of logic or an unprecedented event to have happened. This is something that happens all the time. So I would say it's possible. Another interesting note about this is this story of the Bean Clan, this legend, is actually the inspiration for the movie The Hills Have Eyes. That's where the people that wrote that movie got the idea for it, is from the Bean Clan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw over to Old Boy, and I'd like to get his opinion on it, see what he thought of the legend, and whether he believes that this is true, or whether he believes that it is just a really, really good story.
Thank you, brother. So this is what I'll say about this. Do I believe it exists or it happened? Yes. I believe it's probably been blown out of proportion like everything. It just makes sense. Because, look, they made a movie about it. The Hills Have Eyes. You guys all seen it. Actually, Wes Craven made, I think it was Wes Craven, made The Hills Have Eyes. And then they made a part 2, and it was horrible. And then they made the remake. It was pretty decent. And then their second one was pretty bad. I believe it. The Bean, I've never heard of them. I've heard of stories about this. Like, I don't remember the name, but I think I've heard this before. And do I believe a group of inbred cannibals went around eating people in a cave? Well, it's a possibility. I think it's probably been exaggerated like everything else has been, but I think that there's base truth on everything. I think that there was probably a group of people who were around killing and murdering. It would make sense. He met somebody that was a thief, and they started murdering people, and I don't know what's made them want to eat people. Maybe they were starving or something, and they decided to eat somebody, and then they started liking it, and they started having kids, and they started, let's keep it in the family, start sleeping with everybody, and they made their own family. Now that's why you have a bunch of, if you think about it, people realize mother and sister and brother, they start having defects and mutations and all kinds of problems you're going to have from doing that. And that's why you see, like in The Hills Have Eyes, they are like that, but except, like, I think in the remake, they get hit with a nuclear bomb in the 50s or 40s or something like that, and they get mutated, and then they inbred, and they get even worse and badly defects and mutations in that, in the gene pool. That's going to happen. So do I believe this? Maybe somebody exaggerated. There was like 30 or 40 of them in a cave killing people and then eating them. It could be a possibility. It's not impossible. I'm not going to say it. It sounds far-fetched and exaggerated. I do believe there was people who existed because they have got the Dahmer family. They've got stuff like that. The Wrong Turn, you guys seen those movies. What was this? Tomahawk. It's supposed to be the true story about these Indians that, a group of Indians that did the same thing. They started, they were, what do they call them? They were outcasts from their own tribes. So they made their own, and they would do the same thing, inbreed, and they were cannibals. They ate people. If you guys ever see that movie, it's crazy. It has I think Kurt Russell's in it. You guys check it out. It's a really good movie. It's crazy, how they do things. He has a whistle, and he blows it. And the way they make these whistles, they get, like, I guess the trachea of the neck right there, and I think they pull it out and they make like a weird whistle. It's a really crazy movie, guys. So I hope you guys can check it out when you can. It's a really great movie. Check that one out. It's kind of like that. It's a little bit different though, but it's in the West. It was like in the 1800s. But listening to the story, I believe there's probably a lot of truth to it. The way they killed them, it was probably the other way around, because back in those days, they did stuff like that. Cutting out the genitals and burning the family. I could see them doing that. Look at, what they did to William Wallace in real life. You know, they cut his head off, try to intimidate him, and put his head on a pole. People don't know that part of that movie. I'm trying to keep it PG, but that backfired because that just made people mad. Do I think maybe that the part with they found out the lady was part of their family and hanged them? That could be a possibility too, because they murdered people. If they thought they thought you did something with magic and witchcraft, they would kill you. Or they thought you were a vampire or something, you were worshiping the devil, they would kill you. And all it would have to take is your neighbor to say, hey, yeah, I watched them making a spell. They don't like each other, so they lie and say something. So back then they would torture you. And if you if you would, of course you're going to get tortured in horrible ways, and you're going to confess. And then there's other ways, like they would burn your tongue, and if it didn't blister, then you were not guilty. And if it blistered, it means you were. So I heard they did all kinds of crazy torture methods back then. So it's a possibility they did something crazy like that. They wanted to prove a point. Back then you didn't kill people and you tried to hide away, because if they found you, they did their own justice. It wasn't like, nowadays they have the police and stuff. I mean, they had disposal law there, but it didn't work. They did their own justice all the way up to even to these days. There's people who do it. They kill, they'll go in, it's like these towns still in other countries, they'll find out you're like a murderer, a rapist, or a child molester or something, they'll kill you. They do it. The cops can't save you all the time. They don't care about that. And I could believe that. I could believe that story. It sounds pretty crazy. Actually, that would be a great movie. If they ever made it back then in Scotland or something, that would be a great movie. Pretty gory. I would like to see it, though. But, the thing is, they never made a movie about Scotland. They made it here in the United States. What doesn't make any sense is that movie would have probably been really cool, but they changed it and made it Americanized. So that's kind of weird, but it still was a cool movie. You guys check out The Hills Have Eyes. I think it was made in 78 or 79, I forget. Really cool movie. If you're into that kind of stuff. The second one is horrible. Back then they were trying to make sequels all the time, and then watch the remake. It's really good too. The second one's pretty bad. It's really gory. They made these movies really crazy. They're unrated too. They're not for, like, I can't talk about what goes on in these movies on here because we're PG. Maybe on another show we can get in detail of what goes on, but not in this one, because we got pretty up there in some of this, what we're talking about. Yes, I believe it happened. I believe that they probably killed him the way they did to prove a point, killed the whole family. Probably a couple of them got away. That's what usually always happens. Somebody sneaks off, or married somebody else, or and maybe they went around and got revenge. Like they said, it's never going to be over. They probably had a couple family members. They didn't all live in a cave. They probably had family members in other caves. You never know. Sounds like a big enough crowd of people that could have happened. You never know what can happen. People are crazy. If you make somebody so mad and a couple of them got away, they could made another whole different kind of family and got revenge on people. You never know. I think it's been exaggerated a lot. I think that it's over the years, it's the whole telephone effect. Oh yeah, this was happening. People added to it. Oh yeah, they got burned in a cave, or oh yeah, one of them got away and went to Bermuda and had a whole new family. I mean, stuff like that happens. That happens in life altogether. People will say something will happen and it gets changed somehow. A detail here and there gets changed, and it comes a new whole story. It's like, hey, I saw Bigfoot yesterday. Well, you tell your buddy, well, hey, I saw Bigfoot, and my other friend saw Bigfoot. Well, and it gets split out. Hey, I saw Bigfoot wearing a hat, and he was driving down the street. That's what it becomes to. So that's probably what happened. And then what happened is somebody saw the movie, Hills Have Eyes, and he goes, I'm going to make a movie. And he did. And he probably got it from that story. And the Dahmer family is another one I heard he got it from. And that's where they got the whole wrong turn thing. And I believe that too. That happened. Cannibalism has always happened. Like the Silence of the Lambs, that was based off of a murderer. That really happened. Throughout time, there's always been Jeffrey Dahmer. He's probably the most famous cannibal. You know, he ended up getting murdered in prison for his crimes for what he's done, but he was a cannibal. I'm trying to think of other ones that are well known. I think Albert Fish was a cannibal, and he ate kids and stuff like that. He was a really nasty person too. There's a couple other murders that went around that ate people. I think they said Jack the Ripper kind of was like that. Who else was they claimed it was a cannibal? They said Vad the Impaler used to dip blood and his bread into blood and drink the blood and sometimes eat people. So there's rumors on that. I don't know if that's true or not, but Jeffrey Dahmer is probably the most known of all the cannibals that I've just said, because he's just, everybody knows now. You know, there's more people now in this world. We know what he did and how crazy he was, and you know, he went to jail and he got murdered. So, yes, I believe they existed. Yes, I've probably been exaggerated a million times. Whatever you guys think, just tell us what what you guys think happened. What do you think? Look it up. Don't just blurt something out because you saw the movie. Go look it up, please. That's one thing I always say. If you're going to argue something or try to tell us something different, actually look it up, and don't look it up Wikipedia, because that's not fact all the time. That a lot of that's not. Look up. See if you can find newspaper, like James said, or articles or books. You know, sometimes books are exaggerated too. People are putting it in their words, so remember that. That's one thing I have a problem with books altogether, is based on fact. A lot of books are written by other people that put into their accounts or something they say true, or they can change it and say what they wanted to make the story better. So that happens in a lot of Hollywood movies. Like you see, like they made it where it's in the Vegas, was it Nevada, Las Vegas, not Vegas, Nevada desert, both movies, but they're sitting there in the cave killing people and then eating people. Then they would take women and, and have their way with them and have inbred children. It was crazy. It's a crazy movie, guys. Check it out. But yes, I believe it happened, but I also believe it's been exaggerated, and Hollywood got a part of it. Now it's even worse. But I believe that they got murdered the way they did too. There might be hundreds of different stories that always happen, so you never know. But that's my answer, James.
When you look back through history, you find many, many examples of stuff just like this. All the details aren't the same, but the same basic idea. There are multiple different tribes that were cannibalistic. In the Amazon and here in America as well. It was a belief in some native cultures and the Mayan cultures and everything that by eating your enemy, you were stealing his power and his essence. We all have heard stories of shipwrecks and ships that have gone down in the ocean, and people are stuck on lifeboats or stuck on an island together. And they do the best they can, but eventually they eat what they have available, which is each other. Usually the way it works is the first person dies and they sit there for a while. And they kind of try to figure if they should do this or not. Eventually hunger wins and they partake. Then it becomes normal. And they do it all the time because they realize, you know what, not that bad. Same thing happened with the Donner Party. Everybody remembers that, hopefully, from history, if you actually went to school and learned anything. The Donner Party was a group of people that were trying to go from the east to the west of the country. And they had to try to get up through the mountains there in the Colorado mountains where the Rockies are. And there's this one pass that they would take. But at a certain point in the year, the snowfall would be way too much. And so you couldn't pass through there anymore. It was too dangerous. just got stuck. You just couldn't do it. So basically, you would go up to this town, and if it was past a certain date, they would tell you, you probably shouldn't go up there because it's going to be snowed over here very soon and you're going to die. So you would just kind of winter in that area. Well, the Donner Party was a group of travelers that were coming through, and they were late. And they didn't listen. And they said, to hell with you, we can make it. And they went. And they ended up getting snowed in up in the mountain and stuck. And they tried to hunt, but there wasn't much game because it was winter. They tried to have wild edibles to eat, but there's not a lot to find because everything's underneath the snow. It's winter. They ate the bark of the trees. They ate their own hats, their own shoes, their own belts, their own coats to try to survive. It eventually got to a point to where people started to die of starvation and freezing and all of that. So they did what always happens in these stories, and they had the body sit down in the snow where it was kind of refrigerated, so to speak, and they tried to decide whether they should eat that person. That person was already dead, so it's not like you have to kill to do it, and not eating it is just letting it go to waste when it could save your life. These are the things that were the topics of the discussions and the things that went through these people's minds as they're trying to make this decision. Do we eat it or do we not? Eventually, hunger wins. You get hungry enough, you'd be very surprised what you'll eat. They eat. They realize that it's not the worst thing in the world. The sun still came up the next day. They're still breathing. Nobody came rushing in and shot them. So they ate some more. Every time somebody would die, they would eat them. Then that became not enough. So they started hoping for people to die so they could eat them. Then they began causing people to die so they could eat them. What you're left with in the spring is very few people out of a very large group that are still alive. Those people aren't even really recognizable as people anymore. The native tribes have a legend of the Wendigo. Now, there's a lot of people that talk about Wendigo, but they've kind of lost the original legend of the Wendigo and what it was. They've made it into some Hollywood monster. What a Wendigo originally was is a person that had went down that path. They had begun eating people. Once they ate people, the spirit of the Wendigo would enter them. And they would become something else. They would become something other than the human being that they were before. They were filled with an unnatural and insatiable hunger. A hunger that would never be satisfied no matter how much they ate or who they ate. Because the Wendigo doesn't eat cupcakes. They don't want a bowl of corn pops or Captain Crunch. The Wendigo is only interested in steak. Human steak. They want to eat us. What used to be a human being has now become something completely other than human. And it's always interesting when you read these historical accounts, such as the Donner Party, and the accounts of the actual story of Moby Dick, and other shipwreck tales, where they have resulted to cannibalism to survive. The people that they find at the end of it are always described the same way. They're always described as wild-eyed and animalistic. They're always described as barely even resembling a man anymore. That there's something else. As if a demon had taken that person over. They never described him as just chilling. They never say, we found one survivor of a massive plane crash, and we went there and he was just chilling. Sitting there with his feet propped up, picking his teeth with a finger bone. And he was like, hey guys, how you doing? You got a Twinkie? You never read that. It's always that the person has lost their sanity and they're crazy. And it takes them years and years and years to get back to any semblance of normalcy in society. They're never quite right again. Now, according to the native legends, the reason for that is once you have the spirit of the Wendigo, you never get rid of that hunger. You can pretend you can fight it and try to be a normal person, but that hunger is always there inside of you, always screaming out for you to eat somebody, anybody. Now, those that give in to that hunger and go off the deep end and just gorge themselves with human flesh, they become, according to legends, the Wendigo monster that we are all familiar with from movies and TV. But it is possible to look just like a normal person, to be living in society with the spirit of Wendigo inside you, if you have been down that road. So this is a very plausible story. It's crazy because not only in history, but when you look at movies, man, old boy mentioned some doozies. Hills Have Eyes. The movie he was talking about with Kurt Russell is called Bone Tomahawk. One of the best westerns I've ever seen. It is unbelievable. It is a western. It is a horror movie. It is an action movie. It is all around badass. And Kurt Russell is not only an amazing actor, but he is one of the greatest actors in western movies of my generation. I feel. That's my opinion. He's unbelievable. And in this movie, spectacular. So definitely check out that flick if you have not seen it. It's called Bone Tomahawk. You also have movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which some people say is based partially on Ed Gein, the serial killer. Because he made things out of human skin and he ate flesh a little bit. But think about the narrative of that movie. You have a family, an inbred family, killing, butchering, and eating their victims. Sounds a hell of a lot like the Bean Clan, doesn't it? Wrong Turn, same thing. just like the Bean Clan. So many examples of this. So I don't know for sure whether this is true or not. Some historians say that it's not. Some historians say this is not a true tale. This is a legend. You have other historians that say that it is true, but they can't prove it. So I don't know. But I'd like to think it is. Because it's one hell of a story. And it's got a whole lot of detail. And usually you don't find that much detail in something that's not true. Or at least something that doesn't have some little nugget of truth that it's based on. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. It was a fun one for me. I really enjoyed this story. I've loved this story for years, and I'm really stoked that I was able to share it with you tonight. So I'm going to throw it back over to Old Boy and get his final sum up and his shout outs and all that, and then we will wrap this one up.
Yeah, I really like doing this one, man. Thank you for thinking about it, James. It was really cool. Always interests me. The whole cannibal thing together interests me. You know, I'm into it. You know, I think it's crazy. I have a lot of like that movie was saying, Bone Tomahawk, and that one. Check that one out. I think there's one. You guys are into the cannibal movies. Check out Cannibal Holocaust. One of the craziest ones made in the 70s. Very intense movie. Not the faint of heart. Not for children at all. Check that one out. I hope you guys have a good night. Leave comments what you think. Tell us what you think about our show, and we'll get back to you guys. Hopefully it's positive. Please, if you're gonna argue with us, at least be cool about it. Thank you, everybody on Parax Radio for listening to us every Sunday night at 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern, technically the Monday morning. You guys want to listen to our shows, new and old, check out James Hershey's YouTube page. He's been putting it out the day we do the show. He's putting out the show. So we do it a couple days before. We put it on Parax Radio, and we put it out for you guys early now. So I hope you guys check it out. There's all kinds of cool shows. We also got merchandise. He'll tell you where to go. Shirts. We also have COVID-19 masks. We have mugs. We have blankets. Others. If you want autographs, let us know. You could either tell us. You could send it to us. We'll autograph it for you and send it back to you. So just let us know. I hope everybody has a great night. Misfits, sugar ladies, monster hunters, and demon lovers. I love you, and blessed be, and have a wonderful night.
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. That's where you'll find everything Staring, basically. Every episode of Staring into the Abyss, the TV show we do, Tales from the Abyss, a bunch of different paranormal videos. There's gameplay that I do on there because I like to play video games a lot. I've even had Old Boy join me for some Call of Duty, and we put on the channel. We're trying to evolve the channel and have a whole bunch of different stuff on there for you guys to check out and enjoy. So I hope that you like it. Go check it out and subscribe to the channel if you would. I would appreciate that. And just enjoy it. It's 100% free. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. That's teespring.com/stores with an S on the end /staring into the abyss. If you go to the Staring into the Abyss Facebook page, I have a shop now button there that you can just click and it'll take you right to the store. If you want Staring merch, that's where it all is. We have the Staring Eye logo on all kinds of stuff. And we also have a bunch of really cool horror themed and paranormal themed art and shirts and all kinds of stuff there. So if you're someone that likes merch and you want to support the show and that's how you want to do it, that's where you can go to do it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for all the support over the years. I want you to know how much we value and how much we appreciate each and every one of you. without you guys watching the videos and without everybody listening on the radio, we wouldn't be doing this anymore. We're doing this, one, because we really enjoy it and love it, but also we're doing it for you. Because there's a lot of people that really, really like this show. And we have received messages and stuff like that of people that tell us how much value this show has for them. And I appreciate that. And also, I want you to know that we don't take that lightly. You know, I'm not your normal person that does this kind of stuff who's like, look at me, I'm a big star and blah, blah, blah. I think that not only is it an honor, but it is a responsibility to come into your car or your living room or wherever it is you listen to me at every week. The fact that you are giving me that time out of your life, you're putting your trust in me to tell you the truth, that means something. That is a big responsibility on my part. And I just want you to know that I understand that. And I will do my best to never let you down. So with that being said, thank you guys for listening. We love you. And until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.